from the College by the Lake, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Local, regional, national, and international guests discussing the issues and topics affecting the way you live are on Forum, the North Idaho College Public Forum, with your host and moderator, political scientist Tony Stewart.
Welcome to the North Idaho College Public Forum. One of the subjects that's important to all parents in this country is the success of their children in education. And many research projects have indicated that at the core of that success is learning to read at a young age. As a matter of fact, for those children who learn to read by the third grade, the dropout rate is insignificant and their success rate throughout the rest of their career is much higher. And I'm very pleased to bring this topic to you today through our guests that come to us from St. Michael's Academy. At that institution in the state of Washington, they have a program called Reading Express. In meeting one of the sisters from the academy, I was very impressed with how this program is working, and it's been operating for 3 years, and therefore today I have invited 3 guests from that academy to be with us. It is my great pleasure to welcome to the program, first of all, Reverend Mother Katrina, who is the Mother General at the Academy, and we're very pleased to have you with us today.
Thank you, Tony.
And our second guest is Father Louis Kerfoot, who is the administrator of the St. Michael's Academy, and Father, it's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you, Tony.
And our third guest is also from the Academy, is Sister Katrina Maria, and she is a teacher in the Academy and very involved with this particular program. And Sister, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
And as always, I'm most pleased to have our regular panelist, Janelle Burke, who's an attorney in the state of Idaho, and she is going to open up the questioning with our guests on their program called Reading Express.
Today we're going to talk about reading, and Tony has indicated how very important reading is to adults and to children as well, and to their success in life. But Father Louis, can you tell us what are some of the other reasons that reading is important? What are some of the kinds of things within us that make us feel better if we know how to read?
Well, I think perhaps the critical aspect of reading is that it's really the key to lifelong learning. When a child's in a classroom with a teacher, learning takes place there, but the real sense of learning is when you put the child in control of their own learning. And as you teach a child to read, the child then becomes the center of learning. The child then develops their own pace at which they choose to learn. The child learns that learning doesn't come from the teacher to them, but it's a power that they have. And what reading does, it really empowers the child to unlock all of the knowledge that reading can present to them.
And it can help them with their own self-esteem and how they feel about themselves. Is that true?
Oh, yes, yes.
Sister Katrina Marie, you have been a teacher and you have developed a particular reading program. And as I understand it, it's a program that concentrates on young children learning to read, or relatively young children learning to read. Can you explain what the Reading Express is in very general terms? We'll get into specifics later.
Yes. What we basically do, starting with kindergarten, is teach the children all of the sounds of the alphabet, all the sounds that A makes, B makes, and as opposed to the way phonics usually is taught, in that they learn these sounds through a series of 2 to 3 years. We teach them all within a few months. And we teach them in a fashion of the children sing the sounds, they dance to the sounds, they write the sounds, and after, I would say maybe 5 or 6 weeks, they know all the sounds of the alphabet, and this is what empowers them to decode words. Once they have decoded the words and can do it with frequency, the reading just comes. And from then on, you can't stop them reading.
What kind of books do you use?
We use just regular reading material. We start out, though, with a series in kindergarten around December, Little Bear's Visit, in that series. They take one book at a time. Most of our kindergarten classes go through at least 2 books by June. But they'll read any material. We had a child once in kindergarten who went on a field trip. The whole class went on a field trip and to see horses. And the lady who gave the children pamphlets watched the children open up the pamphlets, and this little girl, Stephanie, was looking at the pictures. And she said, "Oh, aren't the pictures beautiful?" And Stephanie, who was our kindergartner, said, "No, I'm not just looking at the pictures, I'm reading." She said, "Oh, you couldn't possibly be reading. Aren't you a kindergartner?" She said, "Yes, I am." She said, "Well, show me." And so she did. She went up to the woman in the booth and read her the pamphlet. And the woman was very amazed. But our kindergartners love to read. You can't stop them from reading once they've unlocked the words, and we've given them the tools to do so.
I would like to continue on this line. You indicated that you have the reading starting with kindergarten. With the Reading Express, do you keep that same process, or is it a certain point that they've accomplished that and they go on, with more sophisticated development? What grades do you use in the Reading Express?
We use Reading Express in our kindergarten through second. The children continue with the little song for the alphabets. They do a lot of the phonetic drill that they started in kindergarten. But once they get to third grade, it's just a short review, and then we move on to higher reading skills.
And a more traditional approach.
Yes.
Of course, they have this background with them as they go to the traditional.
Along with the whole program, the sisters have developed a series of charts that they use. And so the charts have the sounds, the charts have the rules for reading. And so there's a constant review of those charts and those sounds. So in kindergarten, first and second grade, we go back and we review those charts with the children too. So even while they read, we go back and review the things with them.
So there's a lot of repetition to make sure that it's so well grounded and established that in later life they won't forget that.
Well, one of the things that I've observed is when I've watched children reading, is you can see a child who has a little bit of a problem. They get stuck. They don't look to the teacher for an answer. They look to the wall. They know where the charts are. They know where the rules are. They know where the answers are. And I was just so impressed that the child didn't have to look to the teacher and say, "What's the word?" But the child could look to the wall and find out on the wall where that rule was, and then apply the rule.
So that young children have been taught how valuable that chart is, and it's their resource, their guide.
Or they'll sing it out loud. If they're trying to figure out a word, they'll sing the chart. And wait till they get to the letter that they've stumbled on, then they'll remember how to pronounce it.
My next question has to do with something we talked about prior to the show, and our viewers, I'm sure, aware that we often talk before we do the program, or sometimes I talk several days ahead of time. And that sparks some real interest. Father, I'll go back to you on this question. I was so impressed with the idea that it's very student-oriented, it's student-initiated. I'm very aware that your staff has to introduce this, but tell us more about how that it's the young people themselves that take charge, and they go and share with their parents or with their siblings and so forth. It's very much a peer-oriented program, isn't it?
Yes, it's centered on the idea that learning has to come from within the child. As a teacher, we can present learning to them, we can offer them, but we can't do the learning for them. And if we can touch that core of the child, where the child understands what learning is about, and then begins to enjoy it and looks forward to it, then we have we've hit that drive. What we've seen is the children go home and read to their siblings. We've seen them go home, read to their peers. We've seen them go home and read to their parents. Parents have said that they've taken their children to stores, and the children stop and start to read the magazines on the racks, and the parents will grab the child because they don't want them to read what's on the racks there, perhaps, some of the tabloid things. But the children see signs all across town, and they'll stop and they'll start to sound out the signs. They'll start to read the signs.
So they implement this wherever they are.
Oh, yeah.
It's an ongoing process each day. I'll go back to Sister Katria Maria. As you're deeply involved with the instruction, and I assume working with other teachers that are doing this, what makes this program, other than what we've already said, a contrast to other forms of teaching reading? What makes it different and valuable?
I believe the difference in our program with other programs is that we do teach all the sounds of all the letters within a very short period to the children. Other phonics programs we tried in past years, and which initiated us forming this program, was that the sounds were not all taught in the very beginning. Children had to wait till like first grade to get a couple more sounds, second grade to get the last of the sounds, and what that created in the children was a confusion, because a lot of times there's English words that they come across that don't match the sound they learned. And so to help them over that hurdle, we just teach all the sounds. And what it does for the child, it creates in the child almost a bravery in trying new words or sounding out new words, because they know they have all the tools. They know there's nothing left for them to learn sound-wise. And so they'll just try sound after sound to see if it'll fit the word.
So until they get the right one.
Yes.
It's kind of like working a little puzzle.
And they've heard the words, so many words, they've heard them in their own home atmosphere, that once they've decoded them written, if they're written on the board and they've decoded them, they'll recognize if that's the sound by what they've heard in their home or in their environment. It just speeds up the whole process.
And one more question for you, and then I'll go to the Reverend Mother. You've sparked my interest with that comment. It appears to me what you're unlocking as a secret here is that if you don't teach all those sounds at the beginning, and when the young person gets frustrated because it doesn't fit what they're looking for, out of that frustration is there not an attempt to give up, and that's why there may not be the kind of advancement reading that we sometimes wish for in
Absolutely.
students.
I think it's not only an attempt to give up. The child develops a sense that maybe they're stupid or there's something wrong with them, they cannot read. We've worked with children outside of our own school that have been told they cannot read. And it has nothing to do with the child being able to read, it's no one gave them the tools to read. And this is what our program prevents happening to a child, the belief that somehow they don't understand it or they cannot read. Because from the very start, once they begin to decode, they can read.
One of the parents was telling me they were driving home with their daughter one day, and they were playing a game on the way home, picking an animal, giving the child the first letter, and then the child would guess the name. And so the parent said that this begins with a P, and the child guessed all the pig and et cetera, and couldn't guess the name, and finally said to the child, well, I was thinking of pheasant. And the child said, well, that doesn't begin with a P, that begins with that's an F. And then the child, before the parent could say it, saying, well, wait a minute, it must start with PH, huh, Daddy? Because it's pheasant, PH.
That's real advancement at a very early age, isn't it?
Yeah.
Reverend Mother Katrina, you're not in the actual instruction program. I know that you are there to be the administrator and supervisor with the sisters in that part. As someone who's a little bit off at a distance from it, though, you obviously observe it and you talk to them. What's your reaction to what it does to children? I'm particularly interested in your viewpoint on how it affects self-esteem and self-worth in the children.
Well, last year we had a number of visitors that heard about this and wanted to see and believe that this really worked. So I brought them to the classroom, and it didn't matter what time of day, they were so eager to show that they can read, and they wanted to read, and to watch them decode the word and light up when they got it correct. And we had a visiting bishop, and I randomly chose a kindergartner, and I said, would you like to read for the bishop? So we went over to the parish bulletin board, and I picked something at random, and it was a senior citizens notice, and he read the whole thing. Nothing.
And this is in the kindergarten.
Yes. And of course the bishop was very impressed to see that we couldn't have rehearsed this. I just picked, do this one. And he went through every word on it. So that shows they just beam when they can do that. They feel so accomplished.
As someone else who's working closely with your staff, what does this do for the instructors? What kind of energy does it give them and encouragement to deal with your entire curriculum?
Oh, tremendous amount of encouragement, because it's a life tool. If they can give them the key to sounding out a word, they're not going to be stumped in any subject to know what they have to learn from reading. And so it's a life-giving tool.
Now as you move up,
it makes their job easier.
At the academy, you're K through 12, all the grades. What are you seeing in the upper grades, like high school? well, actually, it's been going 3 years, so you wouldn't have the,
Can't measure
the
it yet.
example, but you can measure it up through 3 years now. What do you anticipate is going to happen to those young people as they get to junior high and high school?
I would think a steady growth in higher scores in their CATs and just overall improvement in education that shows on all levels.
There has been a problem, and the problem has been that we've had to revamp our reading program because we've had to move our second grade material down to first grade and third grade down to
That's
second
going to affect the
grade.
entire process.
Yes.
In fact, what I was just getting ready to say, Father, is I think you're headed for some real development of your entire program all the way through.
It's a challenge.
It's going to be a challenge, and I would suspect that some of the courses in high school now will be some additions and changes because they're going to be at a different level than your high school students are now. Mm-hmm. And you have plans in place to deal with that. Are you going to take
Not
that
in
just
place
step
yet,
by
but
step?
we realize it's there, so we have
We're
to
watching them come up.
address it.
Okay, well, that's fine. Janelle Burke.
My question is for Sister Kateria Marie. When you start to teach students, can you give us an example of something like, let's say we're going to teach students now about the letter A, all the different sounds that the letter A might have. Can you give us an example how that might work or how you would teach that?
Well, when the teacher first starts out, she assumes that they don't know anything about the alphabet and starts just at what we would call like ground zero. In that way, it benefits the whole class because if there is a child who doesn't know their ABC by the time they come to us in kindergarten or had problems in the past reading, none of that matters once they get into the class, and no one needs to know of it either. And Sister starts with what we call our little chant, and she teaches it the very first day of school, maybe about 5 or 6 letters of the alphabet. The chant A says A blank E says as A, all the sounds of A, and then they chant the B, and all the sounds B makes, C, and so forth. After the chant, what she will do is typically put words that begin with A, or the long sound of A, on the board, and that have the letters that they've already practiced in the chant, and have the children see how they apply to words. They also have sight words in the charts that we've made, the phonetic charts that we've made, that emphasize the sounds that they learn in the same format in a little song. And they do that at least, I would say, 4 or 5 times on the first day of school, and they're out for the first couple of weeks.
Now, you also have relatively small class sizes,
Yes, we
isn't
do.
that correct?
Yes.
And is that a help in
Very
this
much
kind
so.
of program? It helps. Some children just need so much personal attention, and they benefit very much from that.
Well, I think it helps having the small size of class because we can then focus in on each child and see if a child is stumbling in some area or maybe isn't getting the sound correct. Because when they say it out loud, Sister listens to all the voices, or even we have the children come up to the front of the room and lead the chant and lead the little song, and that helps. By having such a small size, it helps the teacher focus in on every child. I don't think any child in our classrooms gets lost in the process.
And you do some tutoring as well, isn't that correct, Father Lewis? Some tutoring of students outside just your particular academy.
Last year we wanted to test the program outside of the school. So we have had several classes, again, limited class size where we've taken students from just the broader community and run them through the program. And I think in each case we've brought them up at least a grade point, an entire grade. And in some cases I think we've brought them up two grades. I think of one child who was reading in the bottom of his class of 30 students at the school he was going to. When he finished the program, he was one of the top 3 students in reading.
Now, is this a program that could also benefit some delayed readers? If there are people out there who have a child, for example, who is delayed in their reading development, is this the kind of program that could help them, even though they're older than that?
We hope
kindergarten
so.
or second grade.
We haven't. We're trying to expand it to maybe 6th, 7th, 8th grade level, perhaps in the spring or the fall. But we haven't really done any work with them on that level yet.
Is there a writing component to all of this too?
We are in the process of developing one at this point.
So eventually it will dovetail.
Our
with
children do
writing.
write, the kindergartners do write sentences, and but we haven't formatted a book that we feel comfortable with.
What we also find in our challenge to grow and develop, particularly at a certain young age, in addition to the reading skills, is spelling. Have you seen in your 3-year program that it's also enhanced the spelling when you compare those students with other students you had that went through before they had this program?
Yes, very much so.
And if we are improving in the reading and in the spelling both at the same time, then all the courses and programs in the first grade and the second grade, when they're already getting a little more advanced, are they moving through those particular lesson plans faster?
As far as we can tell at this point, yes, like Father said, we've been presented with a problem from those teachers of textbooks. The kindergarten teacher came up to the first grade teacher and said, "I need your readers." And they need better books for their children. They're getting through their material faster. I think another point, though, with the reading is not just students or children getting through the academics, but what it does for them personally. We had a child that was brought to us who was one of the lowest in her class. She was a second grader, and her mother had told us afterwards, we didn't realize this at the time she was going through the program, that the only thing this little girl wanted to do was to be able to read to her grandmother. And she hadn't for years. She couldn't read. And she went through our program for 14 weeks, and the mother kept saying, "I think you can do it on Christmas. We'll give it to her for a Christmas present." And actually that Christmas, she started with us in the fall, and that Christmas, she did. On Christmas Day, she went to her grandmother and read her a story. And that meant everything to the little girl, that she could finally present to her grandmother a story that she could read herself. And I think giving children that sometimes is far more powerful than having them just read and read and read for its own sake. It's what they can bring to others through the reading.
It really gives the child a sense of power.
Yes.
And that's one of the key parts of this program is we're telling the child from the first day they walk into the kindergarten room, you're going to learn to read. And you see, reading is such an adult thing for a little child. It's been adults who have been reading to them. It's always the adult thing. But once you give that power to the little child just is absorbed with it.
The key word is empowering each child. Reverend Mother Katrina, again, as you observe what's going on in this particular program and other things that you're doing, would you share with us also your view of how the young people that you talk to them, how they're viewing this? What are they saying to you about the program?
I would just have to say that I have seen their enthusiasm. And when you see a child prefer to read than to go and play, that speaks volumes. That, again, they have this tool, this secret that they didn't know 3 months ago, and now they have it and they want to keep using it. And they just, that enthusiasm is just wonderful to see. And what that does to a teacher, to see her children enthused about learning and coming to school, it's a fun place to be, even though there's serious things to do there. That's a wonderful thing to be able to credit to learning to read.
And I'm sure you're getting that same kind of feedback from their parents.
Oh, yes.
I do have one other question. I'll go back to Janelle in the time we have left. But in most schools and in most programs, educators will tell you that some children obviously move faster than others.
Yes.
And I sense what you're saying, that you've narrowed this gap. But is it also correct to assume that still, even with this program, some young children will go faster than others through
Oh,
it?
yes, definitely. And those who are able to go faster are encouraged to go at their pace. We have within the classroom itself many levels of different books to read. And there is times where they can just go and read the books they're inclined to read. So it does encourage the ones who learn faster to keep going at their own pace.
But even those that had more challenge, since they improve, then still they're more encouraged too, because they're going
Yes.
faster than they were without the program.
Yes.
Janelle Burke.
Reverend Mother Katrina, sometimes people seem to think that it's the teacher who endows this special gift upon people. And you're a person who I believe is responsible for assigning teachers. Do you find that some teachers can teach the program better than others, or do you think that this is a program that's quite universal?
Well, we haven't had the test of time on it being universal because we've only tried it with a few teachers, but I think the acid test was in that we had to give it to a teacher that didn't have time to prepare a lot. We came into kind of an emergency situation, and we were almost talking about not having a kindergarten this year for lack of a teacher. We had a volunteer. She went into the program and had marvelous results with it.
So what you're saying is this is something that easily teachers could pick up.
Oh, yes.
And be able to use the program on their own. It's something that it does not require lengthy study on their part.
Exactly.
One of the keys to it, too, is it hits several domains of learning. There's, as Esther was saying, there's the charts. The children have a chant that they say. They have a little dance that they do as they act these things out, as they act out the chart. And so you're helping the children to learn on several levels at the same time. And that's a key part of this as well.
I noticed that your logo, if you will, is the little engine that could. I don't know if there was any particular association between the two, but it is the little Reading Express, the little train. Was there a conscious selection of a train as being something that brings along reading?
I believe when we did think of the logo, we felt so many children are told they cannot read. And the little engine who could was always saying, I can, I can, I can. And that's what we hoped Reading Express would bring to children, that belief that they could read and we would help them learn to read.
We're just about out of time. Let me just say one other thing, then we will have to close the program out, Janelle. Since you're doing this program here, and you have had some children outside your program to come in, but if someone is interested in contacting you at St. Michael's Academy in Spokane, you are willing to share with them, and that they could take this and incorporate it in other schools.
Sure.
Yes. On that note, I have to bring the program to conclusion. On behalf of Janelle Burke and our entire staff, all three of you, it's so gracious and thoughtful of you to come over to Coeur d'Alene to North Idaho College and be with us and share your Reading Express from St. Michael's Academy. We are most appreciative.
Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, I know you found this program to be of interest to you and informative, and I would like to invite you to be with us again next week when we're going to, as we always do, switch to yet another issue that we think that is of interest and importance to you and will be helpful. I would like to invite you to be with us at that time. Until then, please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.
The North Idaho College Public Forum was videotaped live from the studios of Instructional Technology on the campus of North Idaho College for viewing at this more appropriate time. We invite you to join us again next week for another all-new edition of the North Idaho College Public Forum on this public television station.